Poetry Out Loud competition. Our students up here, they've worked really hard for you to impress you. They've prepared for at least a month or more. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about how this is going to go. So first, we're going to have each student come up, they're going to recitate their poem, and then we're going to have a short break, about 5 minutes or so. At that time, Mr. Shaver will be tabulating scores for up here in the front. We'll come back, we'll get situated, we'll go over round 2, and then after round 2, we'll take another short break. Mr. Shaver, once again, will tabulate the scores. We'll take another short break, and when you guys come back, we will announce the winner of the 2019-2020 Poetry Out Loud competition. Sound good? At this time, I would like to invite our hosts for this evening to come up. They're going to be introducing the judges to you.
Hello, my name is Tyriana Patterson. I'm a senior here, and I'm majoring in writing and theater.
And hello, everybody. My name is Grace Mullinex. I'm a senior here. I'm majoring in theater, but I feel like that was kind of obvious based on everything that just happened there. And yeah, I'm really excited. So let's go over our judges. So our first judge is a former English instructor here at Toledo College, Mr. Eric Pilcher. Mr. Pilcher has a Bachelor of Education and a Master's in Literature. He's currently a professor of curriculum and instruction at the University of Toledo, and he's working towards his PhD. His interests include digital literacy, multimodal communication, and walking his dog.
Our second judge for this evening is Zanea Azadi. Zanea is a Toledo Early College alumni, class of 2018, and is currently a senior studying biology at the University of Toledo. After graduating this spring, she plans to earn her master's degree in biology, graduate from medical school focusing on human genetics and cancer biology, and achieve her goal in becoming the first doctor of oncology in her family.
Next, we have Stephen Thomas. Stephen Thomas is an author, freelance writer, and creative consultant. He's written for a plethora of clients, including local individuals, small businesses, nonprofit organizations, film studios, Fortune 500 companies, and prominent professionals. Mr. Thomas also works as an editor and consultant on resumes, CVs, and personal statements, and as a writing tutor. He is the co-founder of The Creative Extreme, an entertainment company that specializes in creating original comic book style characters and stories. He's also written and self-published a children's book entitled How I Met My Robot. And he recently started a YouTube channel called Straight Legendary, where he interviews guests about their creative and entrepreneurial endeavors and motivates his audience with tips and ideas on how they can start their own projects and reach their own goals.
We have Mrs. Julie Kwadikowski, one of our favorite tech English teachers. Period. As well as our accuracy judge this afternoon. Let's give another round of applause for our judges panel.
Alright, so our first recitator will be Aman Ali.
I'm offering this poem by Jimmy Santiago Becker. I'm offering this poem to you, since I have nothing else to give. Keep it like a warm coat when winter comes to cover you, or like a pair of thick socks the cold cannot bite through. I love you. else to give you. So it is a pot full of yellow corn to warm your belly in winter. It's a scarf for your head to wear over your hair, to tie up around your face. I love you. Keep it. Treasure this as you would if you were lost, needing direction. In the wilderness, life becomes mature. And in the corner of your drawer, tucked away like a cabin or a Hogan in the trees, come knocking, and I will answer, give you directions, and let you warm yourself by this fire, rest by this fire, and make you feel safe. I love you. It's all I have to give, and all anyone needs to live, and to go on living inside when the world outside no longer cares if you live or die. Remember, I love you.
Lines written in early spring by William Wordsworth. I heard 1,000 blended notes while in a grove I sate reclined, in that sweet mood when pleasant thoughts bring sad thoughts to the mind. To her fair works did nature link the human soul that through me ran, and much it grieved my heart to think what man had made of man. Through primrose tufts in that green bower, the periwinkle trailed its wreaths, and 'tis my faith that every flower enjoys the air it breathes. The birds around me hopped and played, their thoughts I cannot measure, but the least motion which they made, it seemed a thrill of pleasure. The budding twigs spread out their fan to catch the breezy air, and I must think, do all I can, that there was pleasure there. If this belief from heaven be sent, if such be nature's holy plan, have I not reason to lament what man has made of man?
In Love His Grammar Grew by Stephen Dunn. In love, his grammar grew rich with intensifiers, and adverbs fell madly from the sky like pheasants for the peasantry. And he, as sated as they were, lulled under shade trees until roused by moonlight, and the beautiful fraternal twins, Anne and Gut. Oh, that was when he knew he couldn't resist a conjunction of any kind. One said accumulate, the other was a doubter who loved the wind and the mind that cleans up after it. For love, he wanted to break all the rules, light a candle behind a sentence named Sheila, always running on and wishing to be stopped by the hard button of a period. Sometimes, in desperation, he'd look toward a mannequin or a window dresser with a penchant for parsing. But mostly, he wanted you, Shiva, and the adjectives that could precede and change you. Bluesy, fly-by-night, queen of all that is and might be.
Every Single Day by John Street. Suppose I said the word springtime, and I wrote the words King Salmon on a piece of paper and mailed it to you. When you opened it, would you remember that afternoon we spent together in the yellow boat? When the early whales were feeding and we caught our first fish of the year? Or would you remember that time off Cape Flattery when you were a little girl? Your father smoking, telling stories as you ran the boat, then the tug and the zing of that very first fish spooling off into the gray-green world. You laughing and brushing back your hair before setting the hook. I know I am hard to understand sometimes, particularly when you are standing at the post office with only a piece of paper saying King Salmon on it. But just think of it as a promissory note. And that electric tug, that thrill pulling your mind into deep water is how I feel about you. Every single day.
Bent to the Earth by Blas Manuel de Luna. They had hit Ruben with the high beams, had blinded him so that the van he was driving, full of Mexicans going to pick tomatoes, would have to stop. Ruben spun the van into an irrigation ditch, spun the 5-year-old me awake to immigration officers, their batons already out, already looking for the soft spots on the body. To my mother being handcuffed and dragged to a van, to my father trying to show them our green cards. They let us go, but Alvaro was going back. So was his brother Fernando, so was their sister Sonia. Their mother did not escape, and so was going back. Their father was somewhere in the field and was free. There were no great truths revealed to me then, no wisdom given to me by anyone. I was a child who had seen what a piece of polished wood could do to a face, who had seen his father about to lose the one he loved, who had lost some friends who would never return, who later that morning bent to the earth and went to work.
Our next presenter for this evening will be Abdul Jabbar.
After the gentle poet Kobayashi Issa by Robert Hass. New Year's morning. Everything's in blossom. I feel about average. A huge frog and I staring at each other. Neither of us moves. This moth saw brightness in a woman's chamber, burnt to a crisp. Asked how old he was. The boy in the new kimono stretched out all 5 fingers. Blossoms at night like people moved by music. Napped half the day, no one punished me. 50th birthday. From now on, it's all clear profit. Every sky. Don't worry, spiders. I keep house casually. These sea slugs, they just don't seem Japanese. Hell, bright autumn moon, pond snails crying in your saucepan.
When I am asked by Liza Mueller, when I am asked how I began writing poems, I talk about the indifference of nature. It was soon after my mother died, a brilliant June day, everything blooming. I sat on a gray stone bench in a lovingly planted garden. But the daylilies were as deaf as the ears of drunken sleepers, and the roses curved inward. Nothing was flat or broken, and not a leaf fell, and the sun blared endless commercials for summer holidays. I sat on a gray stone bench, ringed with the ingenue faces of pink and white impatience, and placed my grief in the mouth of language, the only thing that would breathe with me.
Burning in the Rain by Richard Blanco. Someday, compassion would demand I set myself free of my desire to recreate my father, indulge in my mother's losses, strangle lovers with words, forcing them to confess for me and take the blame. Today was that day. I tossed them, sheet by sheet, on the patio and gathered them into a pyre. I wanted to let them go in a blaze, tiny white dwarves imploding beside the azaleas and ficus bushes. Let them crackle, burst like winged seeds. Let them smolder into gossamer embers, 1,000 gray butterflies in the wind. Today was that day, but it rained, kept raining. Instead of fire, water. Drops knocking on doors, wetting windows into mirrors, reflecting me in the oaks. The garden walls and stones swelling into ghostlier shades of themselves. The wind chimes, giggling in the storm. A coffee cup left, overflowing with rain. Instead of burning, my pages turned into water lilies, floating over puddles. Then tiny white cliffs as the sun set, finally drying all night under the moon into papier-mâché souvenirs. Today, the rain would not let their lives burn.
Break of Day in the Trenches by Isaac Rosenberg. The darkness crumbles away. It is the same old druid time as ever. Only a live thing leaps my hand, a queer, sardonic rat, as I pull the parapet's poppy stick behind my ear. Droll rat. They would shoot you if they knew your cosmopolitan sympathies. Now you've touched this English hand. You will do the same to a German soon, no doubt, if it be your pleasure to cross the sleeping green between. It seems you inwardly grin as you pass strong eyes, fine limbs, haughty athletes, less chance of you for life. Bonds to the whims of murder, sprawled in the bowels of the earth, the torn fields of France. What do you see in our eyes at the shrieking iron and flame hurled through still heavens? What quaver, what heart aghast? Poppies whose roots are in man's veins to drop, and are ever dropping. But mine, in my ear, is safe. Just a little white with the dust.
Mama Said by Calvin Forbes. The slice I ate, I wanted it back. Those crumbs I swept up, I'd like my share again. I can still taste it like it was. The memory by itself is delicious. Each bite was a small miracle, both nourishing and sweet. I wish I had saved just a little bit. I know it wasn't a literal cake. It's the thought that counts. Like a gift that's not store-bought, making it even more special. Like a dream that makes you want to go back to sleep. You can't have your cake and eat it too, Mama said. I was defiant and hard-headed and answered, yes, I can too. The look she gave me said, boy, I hope you aren't a fool all your life.
Double Dutch by Gregory Pardlow. The girls turning double Dutch, bob and weave like boxers, pulling punches, shadowing each other, sparring across the slack cord, casting parabolas in the air. They went quick as an infant's pulse, and the jumper, before she enters the waking, nods in time as if she has a notion to share, waiting her chance to speak. But she's anticipating the upbeat, like a band leader counting off the tune they are about to swing into. The jumper stair-steps into midair as if she's jumping rope in low gravity, training for a lunar mission. airborne a moment long enough to fit a second thought in. She looks caught in the mouth bones of a fish as she flutter floats into motion. Once inside, the bells tied to her shoestrings rouse the gods who've lain in the dust since the Dutch acquired Manhattan. How she dances patterns like a dust-heavy bee retracing its travels in scale before the hive. How the whole stunning contraption of girl in rope slaps and scoops like a paddle boat. Her misted skin arranges the light with each adjustment and flex. Now heather-hued, now sheen, light listing on the fulcrum of a wrist, and the bare jutted joints of elbow and knee, and the faceted surfaces of muscle, surfaces fracturing and reforming like a sun-tickled sleeve of running water. She makes jewelry of herself and garlands the ground with shadows.
Passing by Toy Derricott. A professor invites me to his Black Lit class. They're reading Larson's Passing. One of the black students says, sometimes light-skinned blacks think they can fool other blacks, but I can always tell. Looking right through me. After I tell them I am black, I ask the class, was I passing when I was just sitting here before I told you? A white woman shakes her head desperately as if I had deliberately deceived her. She keeps examining my face, then turning away as if she hopes I'll disappear. Why I presume passing is based on what I leave out and not what she fills in. In one scene in the book, in a restaurant, she's passing, though no one checked her at the door. Hey, you black? My father, who looked white, told me this story. Every year when he'd go to get his driver's license, the man at the window filling out the form would ask, white or black, pencil poised, without looking up. My father wouldn't pass, but he might use silence to trap the devil. When he didn't speak, the man would look up at my father's face. What did he write? My father quizzed me.
Tonight, I Can Almost Hear the Singing by Sylvia Corbello. There's a music to this sadness. In a room somewhere, two people dance. I do not mean to say desire is everything. A cup half empty is simply half a cup. How many times have we been there and not there? I've seen waitresses slip a night's worth of tips into the jukebox, their eyes saying yes to nothing in particular. Desire is not the point. Tonight, your name is a small thing, falling through sadness. We wake alone in houses of sticks, of straw, of wind. How long have we stood at the end of that pier, watching that water going? In the distance, the lights curve along Tampa Bay, a wishbone ready to snap, and the night riding on that half promise. A half moon's like the whole damn sky? This is the way things are with us. Sometimes we love almost enough. We say, I can do this. I can do more than this. And faith feeds on its own version of the fast. In the end, the heart turns on itself like hunger to a spoon. We make a wish in a vanishing landscape. Sadness is one more reference point, like music in the distance. Two people rise from a kitchen table as if to dance. What do they know about love?
Art versus Trade by James Weldon Johnson. Trade. Trade versus art. Brain. Brain versus heart. Oh, the earthiness of these hard-hearted times when clinking dollars and jingling dimes join all the finer music of the soul. Life as an octopus with but this greed that all the world was made to serve his greed. Trade has spread out his mighty myriad claw and drawn into his foul, polluted maw. The brightest and the best. Well nigh has he drained dry the sacred founts of truth, and if, forsooth, he has left yet some struggling streams from it to go, he has contaminated, so their flow. That truth, scarce, is a truth. Poor art was struggling gasp, lies strangled, dying in his mighty grasp. He locks his grimy fingers about her snowy throat so tender. Is there no power to rescue her, protect, defend her? Shall art be left to perish? Shall all the images her shrines cherish be left to this iconoclast, to vulgar trade? Oh, that mankind had less of brain and more of heart. Oh, that the world had less of trade and more of art. Then would there be less grinding down the poor. Then would men learn to love each other more. For trade stalks like a giant through the land, bearing aloft the rich in his high hand, while down beneath his mighty, ponderous tread, he crushes those who cry for daily bread.
Hello and welcome back to our Poetry Out Loud competition. Let there be light. All right, let's give another round of applause to our 14 contestants. Aman Ali, you're up first.
To Have Without Holding by Marge Piercy. Learning to love differently is hard. Love with the hands wide open. Love with doors banging on their hinges. The cupboard unlocked. The wind roaring and whimpering the rooms. Rustling the sheets and snapping the blinds that thwack like rubber bands in an open palm. It hurts to love wide open, stretching the muscles that feel as if they're made of wet plaster, then of blunt knives, then of sharp knives. It hurts to throw the reflexes, grab, clutch, to love and let go again and again. It pesters to remember the lover who's not in the bed, to hold back what's owed to the work that gutters like a candle in a cave without air. To love consciously, conscientiously, concretely, constructively. I can't do it, you say. It's killing me. But you thrive. You glow on the street like a neon raspberry. You flow and sail, a helium balloon, bright bachelors but blue, and bobbing in the cold and hot wind of our breath, as we make and unmake, in passionate diastole and systole, the rhythm of our unbound bonding, to have and not to hold, to love with minimizing malice, hunger and anger, moment by moment balanced.
Mingus at the Showplace by William Matthews. I was miserable. Of course, for I was 17, and so I swung into action and wrote a poem, and it was miserable. For that was how I thought poetry worked. You digested experience and shattered literature. It was 1960 at the Showplace, long since defunct on West 4th Street, and I sat at the bar casting beer money from a thin reel of ones. The kid in the city, big ears like a puppy. And I knew Mingus was a genius. I knew 2 other things, but they were wrong, as it happened. So I made him look at the poem. There's a lot of that going around, he said, and sweet baby Jesus, he was right. But he did not look as if he thought bad poems were dangerous the way some poets do. If they were baseball executives, they'd plot to destroy sandlots everywhere so that the game could be saved from children. Of course, later that night, he fired his pianist mid-number and flurried him from the stand. We've suffered a diminuendo in personnel, he explained, and the band played on.
Memory as a Hearing Aid by Tony Hoagland. Somewhere, someone is asking a question, and I stand squinting at the classroom with one hand cupped behind my ear, trying to figure out where that voice is coming from. I might be already an old man, attempting to recall the night his hearing got misplaced, front row center at a battle of the bands, where a lot of leather-clad, second-rate musicians, amped up to dinosaur proportions, test drove their equipment through our ears. Each time the drummer threw a tantrum, the guitarist whirled and sprayed us with machine gun riffs as if they wished that they could knock us quite literally dead. We called that fun in 1970, when we weren't sure our lives were worth surviving. I'm here to tell you that they were, and many of us did, despite ourselves, though the road from there to here is paved with dead brain cells, parents shocked to silence, and squad cars painting the whole neighborhood the quaking tint and texture of red jelly. Friends, we should have postmarks on our foreheads to show where we have been. We should have pointed ears or polka-dotted skin to show what we were thinking when we hot-rodded over God's front lawn and death kept blinking. But here I stand, an average-looking man, staring at a room where someone blonde in braids with a beautiful belief in answers is still asking questions. Through the silence in my dead ear, I can almost hear the future whisper to the past. It says that this is not a test, and everybody passes.
Walking with My Delaware Grandfather by Denise Lowe. Walking home, I feel a presence following and realize he is always there. That native man with coal black hair who is my grandfather. In my first memories, he is present, mostly wordless,
resident in the house where I was born. My mother shows him the cleft in my chin, identical to his. I am swaddled and blinking in the kitchen light. So, we are introduced. We never part. Sometimes I forget he lodges in my house. Still, the bone house where my heart beats. I carry his mother's framework, a sturdy structure. I learn his birthright. I hear his mother's teachings through what my mother said of her. She kept a pot of stew on the stove all day for anyone to eat. She never went to church, but said you could be a good person anyway. She fed hobos during the 30s. Her back porch a regular stopover. Every person has rights, no matter what color. Be respectful. This son of hers, my grandfather, still walks the streets with me. Some twists of blood and heat still spark across the time bridge. Here, listen. Air draws through these lungs made from his. His blood still pulses through this hand.
Ways of Talking by Han Jin. We used to like talking about grief. Our journals and letters were packed with losses, complaints, and sorrows. Even if there was no grief, we wouldn't stop lamenting as though longing for the charm of a distressed face. Then, we couldn't help expressing grief. So many things descended without warning. Labor wasted, loves lost, houses gone, marriages broken, friends estranged, ambitions worn away by immediate needs. Words lined up in our throats for a good whining. Grief seemed like an endless river, the only immortal flow of life. After losing a land and then giving up a tongue, we stopped talking of grief. Smiles began to brighten our faces. We laugh a lot at our own mess. Things become beautiful, even in hailstones in the strawberry fields.
Becoming a Redwood by Dana Jordan. Stand in a field long enough and the sounds start up again. The crickets, the invisible toad who claims that change is possible, and all the other life too small to name. First one, then another, until innumerable. They merge into the single voice of a summer hill. Yes, it's hard to stand still, hour after hour, fixed as a fence post, hearing the steer snort in the dark pasture, smelling the manure, and paralyzed by the mystery of how a stone can bear to be a stone. The pain the grass endures breaking through the earth's crust. Unimaginable, the redwoods on the far hill, rooted for centuries. The living wood grown tall and thickened with 100,000 days of life. The old windmill creaks in perfect time, to the wind shaking the miles of pasture grass, and the last farmhouse light goes off. Something moves nearby. Coyotes hunt these hills in packs of feral dogs, but standing here at night accepts all that. You are your own pale shadow in the quarter moon, moving more slowly than the crippled stars. Part of the moonlight as the moonlight falls, part of the grass that answers the wind, part of the midnight watchfulness that knows there is no silence, but when danger comes.
Advice from La Llorona by Deborah A. Miranda, a found poem. Each grief has its unique side. Choose the one that appeals to you. Go gently. Your body needs energy to repair the amputation. humor, phantom pain. Your brain cells are soaked with salt. Connections fail unexpectedly and often. Ask for help, accept help. Read your grief like the daily newspaper. Headlines may have information you need. Scream, drop kick the garbage can across the street. Don't feel guilty if you have a good time. Don't act as if you haven't been hit by a Mack truck. Do things a little differently, but don't make a lot of changes. Revel in contradiction. Talk to the person who died. Give her a piece of your mind. Try to touch someone at least once a day. Approach grief with determination. Pretend the finish line doesn't keep receding. Lean into the pain. You can't outrun it.
Rabbits and Fire by Alberto Rios. Everything's been said but one last thing about the desert, and it's awful. During brush fires in the Sonoran Desert, brush fires that happened before the monsoon and in the great, deep, wide, and smothering heat of the hottest months, the longest months, the hypnotic, immeasurable lulls of August and July. During these summer fires, jackrabbits and everything else that lives in the brush of the rolling hills, but jackrabbits especially. Jackrabbits can get caught in the flames, no matter how fast and big and strong and sleek they are. And when they're caught, cornered in against the thick trunks and thin spines of the cactus, when they can't back up anymore, when they can't move, the flame, it touches them, and their fur catches fire. Of course, they run away from the flame, finding movement, even when there is none to be found, jumping big and high over the wave of fire, or backing even harder through the impenetrable tangle of hardened saguaro and prickly pear and cholla and beryl. But whichever way they find, what happens is what happens. They catch fire, and then bring the fire with them when they run. They don't know they're on fire at first, running so fast as to make the fire shoot like rocket engines and smoke behind them. But then the rabbits tire, and the fire catches up, stuck onto them like the needles of the cactus, which at first must be what they think they feel on their skins. They've felt this before, every rabbit. But this time, the feeling keeps on. And of course, they ignite the brush and dry weeds all over again, making more fire all around them. I'm sorry for the rabbits, and I'm sorry for us to know this.
The Obligation to Be Happy by Linda Castano. It is more onerous than the rights of beauty or housework, harder to love, but you expect it of me casually, the way you expect the sun to come up, not in spite of rain or clouds, but because of them. And so I smile, as if my own fidelity to sadness were a hidden vice, that downward tug on my mouth, my old suspicion that health and love are brief irrelevancies, no more than laughter in the warm dark, strangled at dawn. Happiness, I've tried to hoist it on my narrow shoulders again. A knapsack heavy with gold coins. I stumble around the house, bump into things. Only Midas himself would understand.
This Most Perfect Hill by Lisa Jarma. On this most perfect hill, with these most perfect dogs, are these most perfect people and this most perfect fog. In this most perfect fog that is the middle of the sea, inside the perfect middle of the things inside that swing. In this most perfect rhyme that takes up what it sees, with perfect shelter from the rain, as perfect as can be. In this most perfect day, at the apex of the sun, runs this most perfect frog song that is roiling from the mud. In these most perfect habits of the waving of the trees, through this imperfect language rides a perfect brilliance.
The Lamb by Linda Gray. It was a picture I had after the war. A bombed English church. I was too young to know the word English or war, but I knew the picture. The ruined city still seemed noble. The cathedral, with its roof blown off, was not less godly. The church was the same, plus rain and sky. Birds flew in and out of the holes God's hand made. All of our desire for love or children is treated like rags by the enemy. I knew so much and sang anyway, like a bird who will sing until it is brought down. When they take away the trees, the child picks up a stick and says, "This is a tree. And this, the house and the family, as we might." Through a door of what had been a house, into a field of rubble, walks a single lamb, tilting its head, curious, unafraid, hungry.
Night Nurse by Michael Earl Craig. This night nurse is different. She walks into my room and does not turn the light on. She thinks I am sleeping. I have just barely opened my left eye and looking through the slightest slit as moonlight exposes the room for what it really is. A collection of surfaces, lines and planes mostly. The night nurse puts a foot up on the radiator and braces her clipboard on her knee as she appears to take down a few notes. I imagine she's working on a sonnet and that her ankles look like polished walnut. You imagine she's working on a crossword and that her feet are killing her. The slightest slit is like an old gate at a Japanese tea garden at night in the rain that is supposed to be closed, that is supposed to be locked. Someone is locked up poorly, you'd say, incorrectly, but no one is asking.
Epilogue by Robert Browning. At the midnight, in the silence of the sleep time, when you set your fancies free, will they pass to where by death, fools think imprisoned. Lo, he lies who once so loved you, whom you love so. Pity me? Oh, to love, so be so loved, yet so mistaken. What had I on earth to do with the slothful, with the mawkish, the unmanly, like the aimless, helpless, hopeless? Did I drivel? Being who? One who never turned his back, but marched breast forward, never doubted clouds would break, never dreamed though right were worsted, wrong would triumph. Held we fall to rise, are baffled, to fight better, sleep to wake. No! At noonday, in the bustle of man's work time, greet the unseen with a cheer, bid him forward, breast and back, as either should be. Strive and thrive, cry speed, fight on, fair ever, there as here. On the Existence of the Soul by Patty and Rogers. How confident I am. It is there. Don't I bring it as if it were enclosed in a fine leather case to particular places solely for its own sake? Haven't I set it down before the variegated canyon and the undeviating vault salt dome? Don't I feed it on ivory calcium and ruffled shellbellies, shore boulders on the site of the petrel, motionless over the sea, its flayed feet hanging? Don't I make sure it apprehends the invisibly fine spray more than once? I have seen that it takes in every detail I can manage concerning the garden wall and its borders. I have listed forth the comings and goings of 100 species of insects explicitly described. I have named the chartreuse stripe and the fimbriated antenna, the bold thorax and the multiple eye. I have sketched the brilliant wings of the trumpet vine and invented new vocabularies describing the interchanges between rocks and their crevices, between the hollow lip and its concept of itself. And if not for its sake, why would I go out into the night alone and stare deliberately straight up into 15 billion years ago and more? I have cherished it. I have named it. By my own solicitations, I have proof of its presence.